Hey everyone, Familian here again. Just thought I'd do another video. This time I'm going to talk about disclosure of being on the autism spectrum or being diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. It's been, nearly 6 years now since I've had my diagnosis. And generally, when I tell people, I get mixed reactions. The main reaction that I get personally is people are really surprised, and they're either really surprised or really surprised and sort of minimize it in a way. I do present really well. I think I've said this in my videos before. I present really well to my detriment because I find it really hard to get assistance when I need it because I seem really capable. But that is purely a front that I've worked on my whole life, and obviously I've created a pretty good front. I know that there's some differences between female and male people on the spectrum. Obviously it is a spectrum, so you will have differences and it's not entirely binary, but I feel like I have developed a lot of coping mechanisms in the way of I've spent a lot of energy hiding my deficits and my disabilities. You know, a lot of people don't know that I can't pay bills. When I see numbers, I can't relate them to things. When I plan, it has to be within the week because anything beyond a week makes me feel physically ill when I'm relating it to something that should be tangible. I can't drive because I can't think that fast. If people are explaining things, I have to relate it back to them in a certain way, otherwise I don't fully understand it. They're just like a small amount of the symptoms that I have to deal with every day. Obviously social anxiety is a big one as well. And I'm actually starting to get into that mindset of justifying myself, and like it's almost like I've gotten used to having to try and prove myself to people and plead my case. And it does make me very anxious to do so. So when it comes to disclosure, because I've gotten used to these kind of reactions, and this kind of having to explain myself, when in hindsight I probably could have just said nothing because I've really gained nothing out of the situation. Yeah, when it comes to disclosure, I've really had to assess when it's necessary or not. When it comes to work, I found in most cases that most workplaces aren't really that sympathetic to someone with an ASD. It's unfortunate. But fairly typical, I found in my case, unless you have a really, usually I think it would be a governmental organisation or a not-for-profit or something like that where, you know, it's probably written into their employment strategy or whatever it would be called, that they are inclusive and have the money and time to spend to create comfort for those with disability. When it comes to like an everyday business, particularly if it's a small business, they're just they're not educated enough in this kind of I don't want to say disability, but this kind of diagnosis to understand. Like when I've disclosed, most people don't understand what autism is at all. So to then go and disclose at a workplace and expect change and expect, people to accommodate for you is a massive ask. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that that seems to be the reality. And I think in the past I've expected people to care more or do more, and that's why the reality that has presented itself to me is that disclosing to a workplace often means that you have to disclose and also provide the information as to what you need specifically to happen. You also need to be prepared that in a workplace that is based upon, the productivity of an employee, if they see you as a risk, they could easily try and strategically weasel you out of their employment, whatever form that takes. It's unfortunate, but in a capitalist society, particularly in a neoliberal capitalist society where, you're expected to do the best that you can do individually and you don't get any extra help for that, that's the main attitude. Most businesses aren't really sympathetic to someone that needs extra assistance or conditions to be met to work in an effective manner. So that's, I guess that's what I've found in terms of disclosing in employment. Disclosing to family, my siblings accepted it and they seem to understand it. My parents, I had a weird reaction from. I think my parents were a little defensive, like as if the diagnosis was saying that there was something wrong with me. And in a way, when it comes to me, there are things that aren't right comparably. Like, if you compare me with the model of someone that's meant to be functioning in society and doing all these everyday things, that's not me. It's not many people, but of course, with an ASD, you have a collective. The symptoms are collected into a higher range than someone else. So my parents thought that it was a negative, and what I was trying to get at there was that while I have things I can't do, there's a lot of things that I can do very well, such as paint and draw and analyze and think about systems. I have a real talent for that, so it's just a different way of the brain being shaped. Shaped probably isn't the right word, but it's like they didn't see that it has benefits, and along with the I guess negatives, which I don't really see as negatives, I just see as truths to be worked around. But anyway, depending on your parents, I think generation, that will make a difference. My parents are in their 60s, so I think coming from the baby boomer generation, mental health and things that affect the mind in terms of different personalities was just something that it just wasn't there. It wasn't there to be dealt with. So they've been better about it, but it has been tricky. The one other thing that I've had when I've told people, which has actually stopped me from telling people, because I'm sort of torn between telling people and then so they can see me and understand that this is how someone with an ASD looks like and acts like, that I may not be the stereotypical vision they have in their mind. So it's almost like a bit of activism, like everyday activism, to not hide myself and to disclose. But when a lot of people tend to, it's like they don't want me to have the diagnosis. It's like they either don't believe me, or they think that it's really hard to explain because a lot of times the response I will get is like, oh yeah, but I do that too, and I do that too, when I've only really, and this is when people sort of say, well, I wouldn't have never thought that, and then I sort of go to explain like one or two things that might put me there, and they're like, yeah, but that's, everybody does that. And it's really hard to explain in a few sentences to someone that what affects me in everyday life over the long term. So yeah, I've quite often been put in a spot where I just wish that I hadn't said anything at all, because I don't want to have to, as I said before, like plead my case. It's a terrible position for me to be in. And then I quite often, I doubt myself, and I don't like doubting myself at all. So, yeah, that's just a few things on disclosure. I'll post another video soon, but I don't want these videos to go too far over 10 minutes. So I hope that helped you guys, and of course just disclose if you find it relevant to you at the time.